Well, hello and welcome to this talk about exploring fascial intelligence. You're going to want to have some water. You're probably going to want to take notes, to be quite honest. This is let's call it a follow-up to a video I created back in 2016 talking about the fascia, the time matrix, ascension, the nervous system, how it's all tied together. And what we don't think about often, what a lot of people don't think about, even though it's starting to come out more and more, that this incredible communicative network, this connective tissue crystalline matrix, is a powerful communication system. It is allowing the body to have a conversation with itself and with the universal body, cosmic consciousness, galactic fields simultaneously. So we're going to explore fascia through the lens of this elegant bridge between science and metaphysics. And we have this now. Those of us who've been, operating in these quiet spaces for some time, talking about this stuff, talking about fascia, not just as biology, but as a living interface between matter and consciousness. Those of us who've had that finger on the pulse for a while now are starting to be taken a little more seriously. So now we have, sure, some scientific evidence to back up what we've been saying for a long time. But we're going to talk about this infrastructure. And so it's going to be a big discussion. So make sure you have some water, take some notes. We're going to talk about the living matrix of the fascia, the vagus nerve. We're going to talk about hydration. We're going to talk about creating momentum of flow by understanding that if we have suppleness and flexibility and pliance in the connective tissue of the body, it must translate to behavioral application outside of us. It's a huge integration that needs to be talked about and really is inviting a level of compassionate understanding. And I hope that this interests you and you're excited to be here. So I'm just going to dig right in. So the fascia, okay, what the hell is it? So it's the body's living matrix, right? It's connective tissue. It is the tensile integrity holding everything in place in your body. So if the human body were a city, okay, the fascia wouldn't be just the roads. It would be the entire infrastructure. It would be the electrical grid. It would be the communication lines. It would be the water system and the structural architecture holding everything together. Fascia is intelligently designed to integrate all component parts of the human body into a holistic living matrix. It's essentially a big antenna, and it's a transmitter and receiver. And it's the primary organ system that unifies all bodily systems so that they can synthesize. And synthesis is a very, very important part of all of this. So it unifies all body systems so they can synthesize their functions and maintain energetic balance and integrity. And that's, in biology, it's called homeostasis, right? So in contrast to that, when an impact occurs in one small section of the fascia, and that's not always physical, it's emotional, it's mental as well. Nothing is a closed system. And maybe this conversation today will help illustrate that. But when an impact occurs in one small section of the fascia, it doesn't stay localized because the fascial network is continuous. It's a signal broadcast, and that signal broadcast communicates throughout the entire system. So think about that. If you consider like the liver, for instance, okay, and again, in metaphysics, those of us who understand the impact of emotions on the organs and systems of the body, you could think about the liver as holding a lot of grief, a lot of anger, Okay. So think about the tensile integrity of the connective tissue that holds the liver literally in place in your body. So let's just say that everything happens now. Okay. From my vantage point, all is now and all is one. And we're having this kind of dalliance, this flirtation with duality and polarity in this 3D matrix or simulation or hologram that we call reality. But what if you could accept the possibility that in truth, everything is all one and everything is simultaneous and everything is now? So that ripple effect makes more sense given this context, because if there's a prolonged sense of feeling anger in the body or grief in the body, and it's not meeting some form of resolution, it's not being processed or integrated so that feeling can move on, okay? There's no emotional regulation happening. Maybe there's a lot of resentment going along with that anger or grief, okay? It's not just sitting in the liver. It's translating out through the connective tissue. And the connective tissue, which is this crystalline matrix that acts like a fiber optic network inside the body, is carrying that message. So that conversation of anger, resentment, grief is happening everywhere all at once. Okay? So just like there might be that impact in the fascia, that in this example, we're using something that is what you call a negative impact. I don't believe in negative or positive. I don't really talk in those polarizing definitions anymore. But let's just say an impact that feels like it translates to an experience that you do not prefer. Just as much as that can, create a communication throughout the entire system. When there is what you'd call positive impact, or you're teaching the fascia how to move that energy, you're stretching it, you're moving it, you're creating suppleness and flexibility in the fascia, then the impact is something that you do prefer to experience. And that fiber optic network inside the body of the fascia, that connective tissue, is carrying that signal through the entire system. So keep that in mind as I continue to talk here, especially as we talk about, how to move and change and ripple a different effect or a different level of experience through the fascia. So in terms of like an impact, like a small restriction in the shoulder, that will affect the hip, okay? A trauma in the diaphragm can influence emotional regulation. And we're not talking about cause and effect. So I'm not saying that one thing causes another, and I will try to be aware of my language around that, because if all is one and all is now, cause and effect is rendered obsolete. Nothing causes anything if everything is simultaneous. But let's just say a trauma in the diaphragm would be noticed as simultaneously some form of emotional regulation, a contraction in the jaw, rippling through posture and nervous system tone. Okay. So let's think less of the body as like a collection of parts, but one entire conversation happening everywhere all at once. And the delivery system, the communication system, is the fascia. So if you could take that in, the scope of that, this is where things really start to get kind of fascinating. So fascia as the connective tissue, it really acts like a crystalline matrix. And what do we know about crystals? They store information. Lots. We can have these tiny little microchips now that store, millions of bits of information. Well, that's crystalline. Okay. Your connective tissue is like that. Your cells are like that. The mitochondria is like that. So fascia is the connective tissue crystalline matrix that stores and moves water throughout the body. Water, hydration is so important. Water within this matrix, but not any kind of water. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So water within this matrix behaves like a structured medium. It allows fascia to function almost like a fiber optic network inside the body. Just think about, okay, AI. It needs a lot of water. Think of how much information is being stored, disseminated, translated, transmuted through AI network communicating systems. Without water, it can't do that. That's a whole other issue that causes problems right now, but we're not going to talk about that. But think about, this crystalline matrix of your connective tissue behaving like that same kind of structured medium where it is information is flowing. There's a constant communication going on, transmutation of information, of energy. This fiber optic network inside the body needs hydration because it's semi-conductive. Ladies and gentlemen, you are a battery. From a bioelectric standpoint, your body is electric. Your health is electric. You are voltage. You are conductive. And the fascia is highly instrumental in that. It can transmit electric voltage. It can oscillate frequency. It transmits and receives mechanical signals so that the organs, tissues, joints, etc. can function. It's biochemical information, which is electrical. And this is throughout the bioneurological system. So think about fascia in these three primary layers, okay? So you have the superficial fascia, just beneath the skin's dermal layers, linking skin to deeper tissues. And then you have deep fascia, surrounding and embedding bones and muscles and cartilage and organs in the brain. And then you have the serous membrane fascia. So the deepest layers forming, and these deepest layers that are forming, they form the membranes that line body cavities, okay? And these secrete lubricating fluids, essential for digestion, for respiration, for waste elimination, okay? And these fluids that are produced by glands and the serous cells, okay? So they keep the tissues hydrated, lubricated, and able to glide. But when the liquid crystalline flow is disrupted by, let's just say, something like dehydration or trauma even, or chronic tension, the fascia will solidify and harden. And when that happens, communication that was before flowing, seamless, is now distorted. Energy gets stagnated, and the body experiences this as, physical pain, chronic pain, emotional dysregulation, restricted mobility, nervous system overwhelm or overload, or even, a sluggish nervous system, sluggish mobility. So the fascia is this messenger. It's not just structure. And think about it if it was to harden and solidify and become restrictive. Think about the tensile integrity of the wires that hold suspension bridges together. They have to move and flow with the wind, with an earthquake. It's not the cement and the metal structures, the larger metal structures of that bridge that allows that. It's the tension wires. They have a little bit of suppleness to them so that it can move and flow. It can have movement and not be destroyed by that movement. Your fascia is the same. And so when it solidifies and hardens, okay, the fascia cannot do its job. It cannot communicate openly, seamlessly through all other systems of the body, especially the nervous system, what I'm going to get to in a second. So this dehydration bit, I'm just going to remark on this very quickly. So we're in the lunar year of the fire horse. This is a fiery year, meaning we're burning through internally old ideas, belief systems, structures, paradigms, even identity structures. We're literally burning through the things that do not serve us anymore. This is very taxing on the body. It dehydrates you. So hydrating with water is important, but not just any kind of water. So remember a minute ago, I said that you are a battery. The human body is a battery. And you can see this on TikTok now. These kids, they're doing these videos where they're holding a light bulb in one hand and then they're touching each other with the other hand and the light bulb lights up. Okay? That's just not some cool magic trick. That's the magic of your fucking body. Okay? That's you as a bioelectric system. You have voltage. Okay? Enough to, I don't know what wattage light bulb they're using. Maybe it's like 15 watts or something like that, or maybe even 25, but you have energetic conductivity. You're a transmitter and a receiver. You're a giant antenna. You're a battery. Batteries need salt. And not just any salt. I mean, you don't want to get iodized table salt. You want to get something like Celtic sea salt. It's also called Brittany salt, I think. But it's that coarse salt. And that's important because salt has naturally, before it gets heavily processed, lots of minerals. The minerals have conductivity. So you need to be having water with some salt. And it's this not some, crazy thing you have to remember that's this huge process. You just go to the store. I go to the co-op near me and I buy Celtic sea salt in bulk. And in the morning, as soon as I wake up, I take a couple little granules of the salt and let it dissolve on my tongue. I just suck on it for 30 seconds. And then I follow it with water because we've filtered our water so much now that we've leached out all the good minerals along with the bad ones. So we don't have mineralized water anymore. Okay. We don't have good, solid, clean water supplies, most of us. So we've got to supplement those minerals elsewhere. Okay. But you can't just use regular table salt. Even Himalayan salt has just a fraction of the readily available biosoluble minerals that are available in the Celtic sea salt. There's like 92 minerals, trace minerals in there, etc. That allows the fascia to communicate. You've got to mineralize with your water. Okay? Because when you have that mineral in the body, what it does is you have cellular water, and cellular water gloms onto something that can act like a magnet in the body, which are those trace minerals in those Celtic sea salt granules. So then you have water-loving cells. You have water-loving cells, and if you give them your cellular need for water has to be mineralized, okay, in order to have this seamless communication, and that translates to the fascia as well. So you can have better cell-to-cell signaling, and this linking of every layer of the body's living matrix together helps, every organ system can depend on this network now because it's hydrated, it's lubricated. The fascia can glide rather than grind. Same with your muscles, okay? So this fascia being hydrated, mineralized hydration, okay, very important because that feeds your cells. Just regular plain old water, you're just going to pee it out. It has to have something to glom onto in the body. So you'll notice if you're someone who drinks a lot of water and you're just peeing all day long, like I used to, when I mineralize first with the Celtic sea salt, and I'll do this like 3 or 4 times a day. Or, on days where the weather is hotter, I'll do it a little bit more because I'm sweating more. And my body's leaching out more of those minerals. So just, 30 seconds, put a couple of little granules of salt, Celtic sea salt on your tongue, follow it with some water, and then you're giving your body something to have the hydration glom onto. You're going to notice you're like peeing less. Okay. So there's that. So this fascia can better maintain the energetic connectivity of the entire body. So think of it like a big biological internet, continuously transmitting information between cells, tissues, organs, and the nervous system. Really important because there is an important piece about connecting the vagal nerve system with the connective tissue system. I'll get there in a minute. So tensional integrity. That's what this body's living architecture of the fascia really is, okay? So, rather than bones, like just stacking like bricks on top of each other, the body is like suspended. It suspends itself through a balance of tension and compression within the fascial network. That's what the fascial network does. It maintains this, it's called tensegrity, it's tensional integrity. So the fascia counterbalances the skeletal system. It holds the body together like this beautiful, dynamic, connective web. And not only do you get elasticity, it conducts electricity. It's also resilience and the ability to stretch and twist and compress and move in multiple directions without losing strength. You can thank your fascia for that. But when the fascia becomes restricted, okay, through, lack of movement, but also chronic stress. Lack of emotional movement is interpreted the same in your body as lack of physical movement. Lack of mental movement, like being able to transmit your thoughts from what you would call negative to positive in real time, is also the same stagnation as physical stagnation and emotional stagnation. Your fascia interprets it the same way. Your nervous system interprets it the same way. Your entire body, cells, organs, tissues, interpret it the same way. So this tensile, tensional integrity, this system loses its fluid balance through, chronic stress or injury or emotional trauma or mental thinking loops that keep you stuck in these same, experiential loops where there's no movement. So these ripple effects appear everywhere, right? And it'll show up as inflammation. It'll show up as pain. It'll show up as, hyper emotional reactivity. It'll show up as reduced vitality or zest for life. It'll show up as limited mobility. They all translate the same. Whether it's emotional, physical, mental. The fascia will interpret it as rigidity and will respond in kind. So fascia is this incredible interface, okay? Yeah, between the outer world and your ability to, function in the body and to move and stretch and, shift in multiple directions. So it's this interface between the outer world and your inner body. The fascia crystalline network is this transport messenger of intelligent information. So when you encounter the outer world, what I call the mirror, just mirroring who you are, that's what the outer world is. It's a mirror of everything you think, you believe, compounded with all the emotions yet unresolved, your beliefs about you, about what is possible. Okay? The mirror is just responding to that. The outer world is just responding to that. So when you are encountering things like temperature, sound, touch, the fascia helps relay that stimulus inward. It helps to reflect that back to you. And that information that you're getting, you're processing there, influences cellular behavior. Right? It helps determine things like gene expression. It helps determine which repair processes can activate within the body, because the body's ability to repair itself is an untold, majestic, incredible experience that we're only still beginning to understand. This information reflected back to you through the fascia will determine where detoxification is needed or can even start to happen. So, for example, cells produce metabolic waste that have to be cleared. This is an ongoing process, right? So the fascial communication network helps signal where detoxification and nutrient delivery are needed. So, the fascia isn't just some, neutral, passive tissue. It's active, it's intelligent, it's part of the body's intelligent decision-making system. So if you're treating it like it's very intelligent, you're taking care of it as if its intelligence can only really function optimally if you are treating it optimally. And that might change how you think about the fascia. That might change any of your thinking about, oh, it's just some fringe form of taking care of the body and that phase will pass. It's part of the ascension process, okay? Our understanding of the fascia and our ability to interface with it, treat it differently as a form of intelligence that's making powerful decisions in the body about what gets to detox, what gets to repair, what genetic expression gets to happen, how our cells actually behave. When we start understanding the importance, the gravity of this, we're not going to treat like, fascia movement as some fringe form of exercise. We're going to have a little fucking more respect for it. It's part of the ascension process. So this is where we get to take the biology, we meet the practical with the metaphysical, okay? So consciousness is expanding. You can believe that or not. That's up to you. Consciousness is expanding. And this is what many traditions will call human ascension. If that's true, and you accept the possibility that we are experiencing human ascension, and that ascension is not a destination, it is a continuum of consciousness expanding, then the body must become capable of carrying greater energetic throughput. Okay, and throughput it's not just input, because input implies that, okay, I can take something in. Can I hold it? Can I allow it to move through? Can I allow processes that need to play out to do so, because I understand that there's an intelligence taking place in the body that I'm going to steward and be a custodian of very carefully and deliberately. And I now understand that fascia plays a central role in this adaptation, because this process, this continuum of ascension, again, is not a destination, it's a continuum, and the body is going with. We're not abandoning the body, as some people might think. I mean, that goes along with the kind of spiritual immaturity, sorry, not sorry, that says, oh, we're going to levitate above our bodies and above our humanness. No. I contend we are teaching our humanness to hold a different level of light body within it. And that, because that's a simultaneous adaptation, all systems, organs, tissues, fascia must ascend with this light body, which is an increase in voltage, which is an increase in bioelectrical throughput. So the fascia is playing a central role in this adaptation. It's one giant antenna, essentially. It's a transmitter and a receiver. It's this liquid crystalline matrix. It is intelligent. Then you'll see that the fascia is this biological antenna of the light body. And so when this fascial network is hydrated, it's elastic, it's electrically active, it can transmit higher levels of bioelectrical signaling. Does this make sense? Okay. Have a sip of water. I'm going to keep going. And if you're liking this, you're grooving on this, you're picking up what I'm laying down, just let me know in the comments, because we're going deeper, okay? So when the fascial network is hydrated, and we talked about that, what you need to do for that to get proper cellular hydration, where the cells can glom on to the salts in the body, you're essentially supplying the body what it needs to be as a battery, as a biological antenna of this light body, okay? So it can stay electrically active. It can transmit higher levels of bioelectrical signaling. But when it's stagnant or contracted, the system becomes resistant to change. Just as the fascia as a tensile network of internal integrity can become fixed or rigid or inflexible because of lack of movement, it's sending a signal that we're in stress, we're in trauma mode, we're in lockdown, we're in fight or flight, so I can't take on any more light. Well, there goes your progress on the continuum of expanding your consciousness. That's why keeping the fascia healthy and supple is no longer optional. It's not some fringe form of exercise that only rich white people are doing. Okay? If you want to move through spiritual expansion with stability, movement must become a daily energetic practice, not just exercise. And complex movement. Okay? There are all kinds of things. Free 7-day resets. If you haven't looked at the Human Garage on YouTube, that's an excellent resource for you, all about the fascia. And they do like a 7-day fascial reset. There's all kinds of free videos you can check out on YouTube that introduce you to stretching, spiraling movements, leaning down and picking things up and stretching and then pulling the other way. Especially the releases that you see in these happening in real time with the people in these videos who, are willing to do these fascial releases where they have pent up trauma and they just think, oh, I just have physical chronic pain. There's never one thing that is in a vacuum. Chronic physical pain always accompanies some sort of chronic emotional signature, some sort of mental shutdown. These things do not exist in vacuums. Some sort of universal or spiritual stop sign that says, I will not ascend. It's all connected. Okay? So movement must become a daily energetic practice. And the kind of movement that's not just exercise, it's about having honor and respect for that tensional integrity of the fascia. It must include some sort of fascial release and spiraling movement and stretching. These keep the piezoelectric fibers of the fascial network charged with electrical activity. Piezoelectric means the ability to conduct electricity, essentially. Okay, it's an electrical process, and that is held in the fascial network. It is an electrical network. And if you want to keep it charged, essentially ionically charged, every stretch, every twist, every fluid movement will help you do that. It charges the body's energetic circuitry. So, yeah, the piezoelectric means it's like a mechanical movement that generates electrical current. So that's why every stretch, every twist, every fluid movement literally changes the body's energetic circuitry. It keeps it updated. And when that current is generated, the next step is crucial. Thought must move into action. Energy wants expression. Movement in the body supports movement in life. There has to be then a movement in your life, some action or behavior, not because you're, trying to learn new stuff or get certified or, get another letter after your name and then you can exhibit new behaviors. It's about taking everything that you've learned up to date and saying, what if I exhibited just behaviors, different behaviors with what I already know? That's movement. That's an upgrade. That keeps your circuitry new and current. Movement in the body supports movement in life. And you'll notice it. It'll be a natural impulse. When you start working with the fascia in a more deliberate and intentional fashion, spiraling movements, even walking, stretching, fascial release. There's a lot of stuff that can happen in the face and the neck alone for fascial release. You don't realize how much shit you hold in your skull, your face. There's so many muscles in the face, the neck, the shoulders, just the upper body alone. And you start playing with different movements here, you will feel that natural impulse to exhibit different behaviors in your life. In other words, to act differently with what you already know. You don't need to learn more shit. You need to apply different behaviors to what you already know. This, you will notice, hear me now, believe me later, you will act on this because you'll feel the impulse, the nudge, the intuitive hit to do so. Because that's what the fascial network opens up in you when it's not rigid anymore. So let's talk for a minute about nutritional support for the fascial network, okay? Food is energy. You're one big bioelectric current. You're a walking battery. You're a living antenna. You've got to feed it. You've got to keep yourself electrically charged. How do you do that? How do you keep the structure of the fascia supple other than just movement alone? Well, give it key nutrients. We already talked about the 92 plus minerals, trace minerals that are in Celtic sea salt and why that's needed in the body. But the structure of the fascia also relies heavily on collagen, sulfur, silica, biotin. Not too much biotin. You want to be careful with that. But abundant pure water. But that abundant pure water, because it is so heavily filtered at this point, we're going to have to supplement those salts elsewhere. Okay, so you can buy little liquid bottles at your co-op, your health food store of trace minerals. And you can just add it to your water. That's what I do at this point. And I just add like 1 drop. Sometimes the dosages are like, put 14 drops in. I don't think you need that much. And because most people have toxic overload in their livers and kidneys, you don't have to go too big with trace minerals. A couple of drops in your, 8 to 10 ounce of glass of water, okay? So these components, like collagen, sulfur, silica, biotin, these components maintain the elasticity. Magnesium too. Calcium, you got to be careful with that one too. There can be a lot of toxic load on the liver when we take too much calcium. These components maintain the elasticity and the lubrication of connective tissues. And after the age of, like 40, 45, collagen production just naturally declines. So you begin to notice things like, stiffness in your connective tissue and joints popping and cracking. Although mine always have. My joints have always popped and cracked ever since I was a little kid. I could never sneak down the stairs in my family home when I was a little kid because my ankles would crack. So I was always getting caught if I was trying to sneak out. So I learned to jump out of my second story bedroom window. Anyway, that aside, collagen also, when we have collagen loss and we have this natural decline in the body's collagen production, you have muscle loss, atrophy, reduced flexibility, pain during movement, okay? So supporting the fascia through hydration, but also collagen supplementation, trace minerals. It helps it remain pliant and conductive. That's the most important thing. It has to remain conductive. Okay, nutrition. What about trauma? What about trauma? Well, this is profound. And, this requires some very deliberate energy around it and some contemplation on your own part, okay? Because this is one of the most profound aspects to consider when we're talking about the conductivity, the pliability, the suppleness, the flexibility of the fascial matrix. It functions as a storage system for unresolved experiences. That's why when you see, and just go ahead, after you listen to this, just go onto YouTube and put in fascial release or just Google fascial release and watch what happens. Especially if you go to Human Garage Network, there's a lot of these videos where people are, releasing so much pent-up trauma, physical trauma, emotional pain, the culmination of overwhelming events that never had anywhere to go. They became embedded as energetic contractions within the living matrix of the body, within the fascia. The fascia holds the record. It's keeping the score of those experiences. So is your nervous system. That's why they work together. That's why the fascia and the nervous system, especially the vagal network, are true partners. And so the fascia, it holds the record of those experiences. It's keeping score of what happened to you. Whatever remains unresolved for you mentally, emotionally, physically, it stays, it stays there until you can acknowledge it, release it, integrate it. So trauma is essentially an unfinished physiological response, right? When it occurs, the nervous system enters overwhelm. The body is going to collapse into old protective patterns that it's had since you were a tiny human. And these patterns become encoded in the fascial structure. It becomes part of the fascial memory. It's an imprint in your fascia. And so over time, it will influence things like posture. Like, have you ever noticed, like, people who are, I don't want to say miserable, but people who just do not have a good outlook on life, do they tend to be the ones that have strong, straight posture, shoulders back, chest out? No. Over time, these imprints in the fascial structure of traumas, unfinished physiological responses, they affect breathing patterns. When you see a lot of these fascial releases, when I've done it with clients too, the breathing in the chest opens up. They're able to pull air from the diaphragm where they couldn't before, where it was shallow breath their whole life. Now they can take deep, strong breaths that reach down into the diaphragm. You'll notice it affects emotional responses. The ability to even articulate emotions when you're having them. Perceptions of safety and the entire body's energetic flow. And many people experience these patterns as persistent tension or areas of armoring in the body. And what is armoring? It's something strong that nothing can penetrate against. Oh, yeah, I see. Makes sense? So in the spiritual body, we talk about this trauma, we take it into deeper into a metaphysical perspective. These blockages affect not only the physical body, but the light body. I mean, how can it not if everything is one and all is now? It's not anything affecting anything else, really. I want to correct that verbiage. It's happening simultaneously. If it happens in one field, it's happening in another. They just have different translations throughout different fields. So what's happening in the physical body, the emotional body, is also happening in the light body. So when the trauma remains unresolved, it can create a sense of disconnection from one's soul presence. Like you feel you're just adrift in life, right? You're going to have a victim mentality, most likely. But the biology is going to also carry persistent signals of fear or dread, this kind of low-grade anxiety that just follows you around your whole life. That's not weakness, it's feedback. It's the body's attempt to protect itself, saying through feedback, we're not safe. We're not safe. So all the protective patterns that we've had in place over a lifetime, we're gonna rally those like our soldiers. We will armor up. But when that's still happening, long after the initial danger has passed, right? The initial traumatizing event is long past. You're still holding on to those things. You have the unresolved emotions, the imprints. It dampens your consciousness, your whole conscious awareness is like covered in a wet woolen blanket. It's shrouded. The light body's natural expansion becomes restricted. And it's because the fascial holding patterns are like, whoa, 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 we're armoring up. We're not letting anything in the physical form. Then nothing can come in the in the light body, in the spiritual form. So healing trauma is not just some psychological work that we do. And it's not just somatic. It's not just energetic work. It's everything. Releasing those fascial contractions restores flow in the entire body, in your entire clarity of consciousness. So, the invitation here is to at least digest some, take what resonates here and leave the rest. I'm not asking you to believe in anything. You don't have to believe in anything. But take what resonates here and leave the rest. Be curious at the very least about this bridge between body and consciousness, and be willing to explore and contemplate what caring for your fascia in a little more deliberate and intentional way, how that might become a profound spiritual practice for you. To hydrate deeply, to move your body daily, to see that movement translate from, physical flexibility to mental flexibility. Mental flexibility in the sense that, like, I no longer think this way of myself, and therefore I'm going to behave or act a little differently in order to sponsor my own growth. How it might affect when you're stretching and spiraling your tissues, how you might experience breathing into places that you couldn't before because they felt tight or numb, and how might this all be connected in helping the body unwind the stories it has been holding, the things you use to justify or validate where you are or why you can't go any further. Because when the fascia becomes supple again, you open up those lines of communication. What was previously shut down is now flowing again. The body becomes capable of creating a greater expression of your consciousness. And the beauty of it is you're not forcing anything. It's a natural evolution. Because this is what this incredibly potent and profound time in history is inviting us to do. We don't have to force our evolution. Rather, we surrender to it. And maybe surrendering to it might be just being a little bit more open about what I'm offering up here. Maybe the surrender is just an allowing the living matrix of your body to remember how to move as one unified field. So let's finish up by talking about the vagus nerve and the fascial network. They're basically dance partners in the body's regulation system. Okay, so the fascia is carrying the signal, and then the other distributes the message with the entire living matrix of the body and into the universal field, into the spiritual light body. So the body has a master regulator, and it's the vagus nerve. It's the largest cranial nerve in the body. It's the main highway of the parasympathetic nervous system. It's the branch responsible for rest, repair, digestion, healing, emotional regulation. I have a beautiful vagus nerve sound healing with tuning forks. If you want that, let me know in the comments, and I will dig that out of my archive and share it with you. So the vagus nerve originates in the brainstem, and it travels through the neck, the heart, the lungs, the diaphragm, the digestive organs. But it doesn't operate in isolation. Nothing does. I hope that's clear. Nothing operates in a vacuum. Everything's connected. It's all embedded in, wrapped by, and mechanically influenced by the fascial network, the vagus nerve. And the fascia is the physical environment through which the vagus nerve travels. Okay. So whatever affects the fascia will influence vagal signaling. So the vagus nerve carries the signal. I think I misspoke before. The vagus nerve is the one that's carrying the signal, and the fascia is the one that communicates and distributes that message. Okay. So it's this beautiful partnering. And it's, the fascia is, you could think of it as, it's a mechanical network. It's electrical. It's a suspension system for the nervous system. It's the interface for the vagus nerve, in a sense. And so all the nerves, including the vagus nerve, surrounded by layers of connective tissue. Okay. And they integrate directly into the fascial matrix, the whole connective tissue matrix. If the fascia becomes tight, dehydrated, restricted, it creates mechanical tension along the nerve pathways. Okay. So the mechanism can't transmit. It can't receive, it can't transmit. So your antenna is shut down. And this happens along the nerve pathways when the fascia is tight. So it alters how nerve signals will travel, right? So in very practical terms, that makes sense. This kind of fascial restriction can contribute to shallow breathing, digestive disturbances, chronic stress, poor heart rate variability, heightened anxiety responses, right? Even when something's like, this is just a small problem, why are you freaking out? Well, because the mechanical tension along my nerve pathways are fucking shut down. Okay. So this doesn't ever mean like that your nerves are damaged, but the environment is constricted. That's really important in understanding that, like, a lot of people still talk about nervous system dysregulation. I really, really don't like that term because your nervous system is not dysregulated. It's responding perfectly to the environment that it's in. And if the environment is constricted, and in this case, we're talking about the fascial network, that environment is constricted, it's just going to have a natural response to being constricted. It's going to shut down. The nerve signal cannot travel. Okay. So a lot of times we talk about nervous system dysregulation, and I disagree. Your nervous system is working perfectly all the time, but what is the environment that it's in? And that maybe a little more initiated, deliberate movement, shifting the fascia, opening up that network of the connective tissue will change how your nervous system is functioning. So one of the most important intersections of the fascia and the vagus is the diaphragm. So the vagus nerve passes through the diaphragm. And the diaphragm itself is one of the most important, significant fascial intersections or hubs. So the diaphragm connects through the fascial network to the heart, the lungs, the spine, the psoas muscle, which is a huge muscle, the abdominal organs. So when you think about when you have a stress response, when you're feeling fight, flight, or freeze, wouldn't you say you feel it in all those places? Like your spine tightens up. You feel the psoas muscle, which is a large muscle running along the sides of the body. The abdominal organs, you feel the fluttering in your belly. You feel the shortness of breath, tightening. You feel your heart seize up. You feel clenching. And that's affecting everything. Your digestion, your breathing. The fascial tension of that spreads through the entire torso when you experience this level of impingement through a moment of trauma. It causes the diaphragm to tighten. Several things happen. And the vagus nerve receives fewer signals that the body is safe. In fact, it's feeling just the opposite. The vagus nerve, the largest cranial nerve in the body, affecting many, many systems throughout the body, is saying, we're not safe. So the system stays in sympathetic activation, which is fight, flight, or freeze. And the problem is we're not doing this because, we're getting in a car wreck. We're doing this because our boss called us into his office and we think we're getting fired. We do this because we got a bill in the mail that says we owe $3,300 when we've got $20 in the bank. So you can see how we might be in these prolonged sympathetic activation states of fight, flight, or freeze, and how this is shutting everything down. So I'm just going to invite you to think about something. What if you thought of the fascia as a sensory organ? Like you think of your ears, okay, that allows me to hear. My fingertips allow me to touch. What if you thought of the fascia in a way that maybe most people wouldn't think to? Because it does have millions of sensory receptors. In fact, a lot of research is showing now that fascia is considered to be one of the body's largest sensory organs, like the skin. Okay. These receptors, millions of sensory receptors through the fascia, communicate continuously with the nervous system, including the vagus nerve, providing information about pressure or stretch or tension, internal body states. And this means that when fascia becomes supple and mobile and pliant and flexible, the brain receives different signals, clearer signals that the body is safe. This upregulates your entire vagal tone. And vagal tone means your nervous system is functioning optimally. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing, and it upregulates instead of downshifting into fight, flight, or freeze. It upregulates in vagal tone to we are safe. And what happens when the entire body system, your light body, the universal field, let alone the physical, emotional, and mental fields of the body, the spiritual field, the universal field, the light body, with this upshift in vagal tone, it's saying, I am safe. It supplies you with feeling like, oh, I can establish and maintain some emotional resilience. I'm safe to do that. Because to do the greater work on ourselves, in other words, to move towards a state of thriving other than just surviving, we've got to move out of that sympathetic activation state of fight, flight, or freeze. Then we get to, quote unquote, work on things like better digestion, emotional resilience, improved immune function, calm mental states, greater capacity for social connection and enriching relationships. You're not doing that when you're in survival state because your body is, and everything is so narrowly focused on, let's just fucking survive here. Everything else is secondary. So now let's connect this. The trauma, the fascia, the vagus loop. So when an overwhelming experience occurs, okay, yeah, it could be in a car crash, but it could be your boss calling you into his office because you think you're going to get fired. The nervous system is going to downshift into protective states like freeze, flight, fight, freeze, or shutdown. Your entire body literally contracts to contain the experience. It's a protective pattern. That contraction becomes stored in fascial patterns. It becomes an echo. Like it's an imprint and it becomes an echo. And that echo will reverberate in areas of the body like the jaw, the throat, the diaphragm, the pelvis, the psoas muscle. And these patterns can subtly, maintain an echo, signals of danger within the nervous system. So anytime anything remotely close to that overwhelming experience is occurring, or you feel it might occur, because the brain is largely predictive. We might predict, oh, this is the same set of circumstances like before, so this is going to happen. You're sending the system a message, the fascial network, the vagus nerve, these messages that like, oh, wait, I know you want to relax, but we're not doing that. We got to brace because danger is coming. And we're doing this a lot. We're holding this kind of bracing feeling more often than we're not. And so that's why trauma healing, yeah, it requires somatic work, but it doesn't even just stop there. It's not just cognitive insight. It's not just applying a new mindset and hope that it sticks. It's also having a fascia release. So that echo where you maintain that imprint can finally move and shift. And you can upregulate that tone, that vagal tone. So the vagus nerve is getting this message of a shift. The fascial network is getting a shift to, oh, regulation means we're safe and we can do that now. And it's congruent because you're taking action, in other words, exhibiting behaviors in your outer world that's echoing the congruence in your inner world. And then you see now it's all connected. So you have to follow with some sort of outer movement. You have to apply a new behavior that aligns with this level of release and regulation, upregulation in the body, in the vagus nerve, in the connective tissue. And that's why when there is this congruence and it happens, we have this kind of release. That's why people, spontaneously sigh or yawn or cry or feel warmth spreading through the body. That's the whole nervous system resetting. That's your power returning. That's big time. And if you've ever experienced anything like that, you know. If you know, you know. So how do we do it? How do we do it? So having gentle movement practices, stretching, spiraling, fascia release, walking, breath work, all very powerful. If you can do these 3 things simultaneously, you'll start creating these shifts. Okay? Hydrate and mobilize the fascia. We talked about both of those in here. Get yourself some Celtic sea salt today. Set a reminder on your phone, your watch, whatever, to take it at least 3 times a day. A couple little granules of salt on the tongue, suck on it for a minute, then drink your water. Mobilize the fascia. Let those things be married together for you. That when you hydrate, you have your Celtic sea salt, you have your water. Do something to mobilize the fascia. Do some deep stretches. Do a deep squat. Deep squats will save your life. I can't swear by them enough. The second thing, mechanically stimulate vagal pathways. How do you do that? You breathe. Breathe deep. Slow breathing, in particular, stimulates the vagus nerve through the diaphragm. So that's why when I work with people, we start our classes, we start with, like, I tell you to breathe deep into your man bits and your lady bits. Imagine pulling air from the deepest level of you, from your most intimate part. Breathe from that place and do it slowly. And then exhale slowly. And when that happens, the entire fascial matrix begins to soften and become pliant and flexible again. When you are breathing into presence, your body gets the message, presence equals safety. So create those spaces for yourself. You don't need to take more than 90 seconds to do this breathing, okay? Signal safety to the nervous system. This is a third thing. There's really 4 things here. So there's 4 things. The body is receiving permission to unwind old holding patterns. When you're doing your deep breathing, you put one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and you're breathing deep, and you can just sway, shifting your energy from one leg to the other, swaying side to side, and saying something simple like, I can hold more. Because you're moving the body, you've shifted the fascia. You can even move your neck from side to side. You can take your index finger and press into your belly button cavity, because that signals the vagus nerve to soften and release. And you could do that. There's a lot of different ways you could do this. And you can simply say, I can hold more. It is safe for me to hold more, whatever. Prosperity, visibility, responsibility, money, okay? And you'll notice you're slowly beginning to unwind. But this is not a one-off thing. You don't do it just once. To create regulation is to create repetition through something you're continuously doing. So the 4th thing, take different actions. Exhibit different behaviors with the information you already have. So if you're creating movement and flow within the body, the fascial network, you're making your body a clearer bioelectrical antenna through these things I'm offering up to you here. There must be a movement of that energy, because nothing is in a vacuum. Everything is on a continuum. Everything is now. Everything is simultaneous. Everything is connected. So exhibit some different behaviors, ones that align with the ideal life you want, where you would like to go, what you prefer to experience. And you unwind simply by doing something that is more aligned with the values you hold, what has meaning for you in your life. You're naturally unwinding old patterns by establishing new ones. Final integration here. Let's weave this back into the metaphysical. So if we zoom out to the lens that we're exploring this through, which is human consciousness evolution, Okay, that's really the only lens that I'm interested in looking through at this point. So through the lens of human consciousness evolution, you're looking at your vagus nerve, you're looking at your fascia with different kinder, more explorative, contemplative eyes. Okay. You realize that together it's a beautiful dance and a partnering. It's a biological translation system. The vagus nerve regulates the state of the nervous system. The fascial network distributes that state through the entire body through this fascial network, this dynamic web of communication. And so when both systems are coherent with each other, the body feels safe, energy flows, perception, intuition becomes clearer, more refined. Because again, you're not focused on that myopia of just survival. And all those secondary activities like feeling safe in the body so that energy can flow and perception and intuition can flow again. And you can work on your relationships. You can work on your connection with your past trauma. You can work on deep self-healing. Consciousness can expand. And you're not overwhelmed in your biology anymore in order to do it. You're not forcing these secondary, or what you think of as secondary practices. Everything is secondary to survival as far as the body, the fascia, the vagus nerve is concerned. But now you can involve yourself in practices that are creative. And that supports the vagal tone and the fascial health even more. And what will that lead to? Oh, I don't know. Intuitive clarity, emotional breakthroughs, heightened sensory awareness, perceptual diversity on many different planes, multidimensional levels of awareness, deeper states of presence. Because now the body is a stable container for expanded awareness. And you can just, as an experiment right now, just take a slow inhale through the nose. Let the breath expand your rib cage in all directions. And then slowly exhale while you're gently humming. Humming stimulates the vagus nerve. The breath mobilizes the diaphragm. The vibration spreads through the fascial network like an upgraded bioelectrical current. It takes a minute, less than that. Take a slow inhale through the nose. Let the breath expand your rib cage in all directions. And as you slowly exhale, do it while humming. Spend, a minute here and a minute there throughout your day just humming, breathing deeply. You are resynchronizing the vagus nerve and the fascia every time you do that. You'll feel your shoulders just kind of drop, your body softens. Your body's already designed for coherence. It knows how to do it. It's an ancient blueprint, coherence. But we've learned our way out of it. You get to remember your way back to it. The real thing here is, do you want to do that or not? It's up to you. But understand something, the vagus nerve is regulating this rhythm, the fascia distributes the signal. Understand that beautiful dance of cosmic consciousness working right in your living field of your biology. You'll embody safely in a different, you'll embody your fullness, your wholeness safely. And in a way that feels so delicious, so yummy, so magical. And you'll realize I never have to push my nervous system faster than my fascia or vagal capacity can integrate. I'll never have to do that again. You come back to this. Come back and listen to this a few times. Could it be, that what we're exploring here, because this is going to integrate into the next program I'm teaching, the sovereign field, could it be that we can explore even further how fascial conditioning might be the missing bridge for stabilizing expanded states of consciousness. Just based on what I've shared here, can you accept the possibility that that might be true? And it might be even more fascinating than hopefully you thought this conversation was. So I'm going to leave it there for now. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for listening. I know that it went on for a minute. You can listen again, share this with someone you think would really benefit from this. If you know people who do acupuncture, they already know the medians are working at different connective points, hubs of connective tissue and vagal nerve points. People who have been practicing acupuncture know this. Thousands and thousands of years before modern acupuncture was birthed, people knew this. And now it's finally, coming into mainstream, if you want to call it that, and being honored and respected for the truth that it is. So I'd love to know what you think about this. Yes, you have to be careful with iron. Women need to be careful with iron. And you can always get your iron levels checked. There's a lot of things that you can do now to check your mineral levels in your body. If that's a concern for you, just do that. Get your levels, get your base levels set so you know what you're dealing with. So thank you so much, and lots of love and blessings. Bye for now.